Hello, everybody. Welcome into Saw is War. My name is Dustin, and it is a great day to talk about wrestling because Clash at the Castle is in the books, and the SummerSlam card is getting clearer by the minute, and it looks like it's shaping up to be an unbelievable show. So we will get to that later. We will get to everything Clash at the Castle a little bit later as well, before diving into all of the topics and all of the things happening this week. Just want to take a second and say if you are new to the show, please like, subscribe, follow anywhere you get your podcasts. Every little bit helps, and I greatly appreciate it. You can also always comment any questions, thoughts, opinions on any of the stories or anything from that week, or send an email. I'll put the email address in the description and in the show notes for podcast listeners as well. Please feel free. Send in anything you'd like, anything that catches your eye, topics that I miss, feedback on anything. Please, always open and always interested in hearing from everybody and kind of keeping the conversation going that way. So this weekend, this Saturday, was Clash at the Castle. I am recording this Saturday night, so we won't really recap too much from the Raw and SmackDown side of things because it was all kind of built around having Clash at the Castle, so we'll get into most of that stuff talking about that. But did want to hit a couple things first before getting into all that, which we'll start with NXT, which NXT Battleground was last Sunday. It was at the UFC Apex where they held all of the pandemic era pay-per-views with a capacity of like 1,000 people, and it looked like they packed as many people as they could in. There were a lot of reports that talent was not too happy with that, and that they felt that the condensed arena took something away from what they were able to do in ring and just at the overall feel of the show. There were a couple times too where, you know, the crowd would start chanting or firing up and you couldn't really hear their reactions. Like the chants and the things, it sounded really subdued sometimes. And I think that kind of hurt some of the overall quality of the matches. So even if the in-ring work was great and, you know, it was, as is typical for NXT at this point, it was all pretty stellar across the board. Still, it didn't quite hit that all-time NXT type feel because you didn't have that big loud crowd being super fired up and into it to kind of put it over the top. So I appreciated them trying this, and I'm sure they'll probably do it again. Hopefully, you know, they listen and see what worked, what didn't, see what the talent feedback would be in ways to kind of improve that. But I'm sure this is not the last time we will see them try this. On TV, though, on NXT this last week, it was obviously dealing a lot with the fallout from that show. And a couple things in particular. Cody Rhodes came down to NXT to pop the ratings, but also announced that there would be a 25-man battle royal to determine who the next number one contender will be for the NXT title, who will face Trick Williams. We had this great moment with Cody and Trick Williams going back and forth. And it ended with Trick Williams saying, "Cody, I cannot let you leave without asking first. July 4th is coming up. Are you coming to the cookout?" And Cody was like, got no choice. Cody Raheem Rhodes had no choice but to go to the cookout. And it was a great moment. And it was made even better by the fact that Brian Alvarez on Twitter had no idea what that meant. He did a interview or he did a podcast or something. The clip is going around. I'm sure you can find it, where he goes and Trick mentions this cookout, and then the crowd goes crazy because I guess they do this cookout for NXT fans in the NXT area. It's like this exclusive thing.
4th of July is around the corner. Are you coming to the cookout? And the place goes nuts. I guess they have a local cookout at the Performance Center for the fans, and Cody looks around, the place is going nuts, and he says, "Yes, I'm coming to the cookout," and they all go nuts, and guess he's going to the cookout.
And he just, no awareness, and it was incredible. It was an incredible amount of an incredible display of a lack of self-awareness there. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So next time you hear anyone mention a cookout, just remember, Brian Alvarez does not know what you're talking about. The other big story coming out of NXT this week were a couple big returns that we had. Eddie Thorpe returned after a long injury absence, and Wendy Chu returned after like 6 months away. And that's the return I'm a little more interested in It has been a long time since we have seen Wendy Chu, and she was someone that was super over with the crowd, and she came back as like, I don't know if it's supposed to be a nightmare persona or a sleep paralysis demon or what, but she has come back as like a dark version of her character, which I would have not thought was a possible thing to do, with her whole character being she's tired and she falls asleep in the ring and carries around a pillow and a giant thermos of water. Like, you could not have told me that there would be a successful way to make that a monster heel. But here we are. We're going to see how this goes. I am super intrigued because she is one of, I think, the best in-ring workers in NXT. It's a huge boost to get her back into the fold. And as this new character, it's going to be a pretty interesting dynamic to see. So I'm curious to see what they do with her. But that first match back was booked to perfection if the whole goal is to make her just an absolute monster heel. And I know I said I wasn't going to talk about Raw and SmackDown. One thing I do want to talk about with SmackDown really quick is this story that they ran. I don't even know if they played it during the show, but I saw it at Friday afternoon. Was they filmed this segment with LA Knight at Logan Paul's house, just in his pool hanging out. And you would think it would end in like a fight or something at the house. And no, he just gets up and they talk and he leaves. It was a weird, like, anticlimactic type thing, but I love that they did that. And a lot of people were saying it's not actually Logan Paul's house. Apparently it's his brother's. I don't know. I'm not deep in the Paul brother lore like that. But I appreciate them doing all of these new, weird, different things. And I appreciate him being willing to go along with basically anything for the sake of, standing out and making something have more impact. So if you did not see that little vignette, it was pretty good. It was pretty well executed. So anyways, before we get to Clash at the Castle, just want to talk about AEW really quick this week as well. It was another week of building towards the Forbidden Door pay-per-view over on AEW Dynamite, which obviously that's the big show that is going to be, one of their bigger events of the year. And they just announced that it will be Zack Sabre Jr. wrestling Orange Cassidy. And both of those dudes, I think, have a lot of respect for each other. I don't think people realize what kind of regard that Zack Sabre Jr. holds Orange Cassidy in. So I think those two dudes will have an absolutely show-stealing level match. I think they're going to put on an incredible performance. And that's one thing, too, with the AEW card is every time a match gets announced, yes, the cards are often, stacked and maybe a little bit overfilled, but usually there's no doubt that every match is going to get ample time. Like, I know that used to be a real concern with WWE, where it would be like, okay, there's 8 matches on the card, but like 2 of those matches might be under 5 minutes. So every time AEW announces a match, I kind of immediately imagine, okay, they're going to get a full amount of time to do what they want to do. And, kind of predicting and thinking about the match becomes like, what's it going to be at its absolute best? And I think that's a benefit to AEW. It might also be a hindrance because sometimes you do have those high expectations that just kind of can't be met with how excited you are going into something. But with these guys, with Orange Cassidy and Zack Sabre Jr., I think that is just a recipe for a wonderful blend of styles and just what is going to be an extremely memorable match on a card that looks like it is filling up with them more by the minute. We also got confirmation that this week AEW Dynamite will start commercial-free with MJF returning to the ring to take on Arush. MJF has not wrestled since dropping the belt to Samoa Joe, and they had this nice pull-apart segment where they brawled into the back, and they really seemed like they were beating the hell out of each other. MJF and Rush, it's an interesting combination, but I think it's going to work really well in the ring just because Rush has that kind of like brutal, relentless-looking style, so it's going to just look good no matter who he's wrestling. It's going to just look brutal. The other big announcement that we got from AEW this week is the return of Blood and Guts this summer. And it was an interesting way that they brought it out. They had the league come out and they talked to Swerve Strickland and basically kind of said, hey, we're going to do a Blood and Guts match so we can beat up a bunch of AEW people. You in? You want to be on the team? And he said no. And now it looks like it's going to be Team Elite versus Team Swerve and his super friends. So who knows? It looks like it's at least Swerve and the Acclaimed, but that doesn't seem to be set in the stone either. We have like another month or two before we get to that match, so we will see how they choose to build it. Kind of an odd way to announce and to get started towards building this match when it is one of, the bigger broadcast matches that they tend to have. That's one that, that could easily be on a pay-per-view, but they put it on TV every year, and it's been, pretty successful results, I would say, every year. But just kind of an odd way to announce it and start building towards it, with the thought being, okay, the people in charge are going to, this storyline is going to continue for the next 2 months or so to hopefully blow off at Blood and Guts, but we'll see, just exactly how we're going to get there. I think that is everything from around the world of wrestling, so we will dive into Clash at the Castle and the impact that is probably going to have on SummerSlam right now. Clash at the Castle turned out to be a lot better of an event than I expected. Obviously with shows like this, it feels like, okay, there's going to be a lot of good wrestling. There's always good wrestling on the show, but not a lot of things were going to happen. It didn't feel like it would be like a consequential show in terms of like massive shifts in things. But WWE has gotten really good in recent months and in the last year or two at making big things happen at these shows that don't quite shift everything. It's not as big as a title change, but there's a huge development in the story or something. They've gotten really good. It's specifically the Bloodline storyline really hit its stride at these types of events. You think about the Clash at the Castle from 2 years ago, when Solo Sikoa debuted on the main roster and helped Roman win and join the Bloodline. Like, obviously, not a huge thing like the title changing hands, but a huge shift in that story as they brought in another dynamic character and gave him that huge spot right out of the gate. So this is kind of more along the lines of that. There were a couple shocking moments, I think, that I was not prepared for. We'll start with the feel-good moment of the entire show, which is Alba Fire and Isla Dawn winning the Women's Tag Team Championship, which I would not have imagined in a million years was going to happen. But they win. For them to get this moment, specifically for Alba Fire to get this moment, just, I think, less than a week, maybe a week or a week and a half removed from her mother passing away in a tragic accident. I don't even want to say it. Look it up if you have not heard what happened. It is just awful. And for her to get that moment so soon after that, to pull off this huge upset in close to closer to home than WWE events would normally be, and to have that moment, it was such an emotional moment, and you could see everyone just being so happy for the two of them and for the work that they've put in, and they held the women's titles before. And once they dropped them, it kind of felt like things went out of control for a little bit, and the booking kind of lost the plot for a bit. But they picked them up off of Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair, which is stunning that they would lose them like that. I don't think anyone expected them to lose, but here we are. I'm very interested to see what this does for the two of them as a team moving forward, and if this is going to mean we get Jade Cargill versus Bianca Belair at SummerSlam, or if this is just a wrinkle in the story. But I was very, very surprised at that, and I couldn't be happier. I thought the match went very well. It had a couple sloppy spots, but there was stuff like that all show long, really. It felt like there were a couple issues with, like, the ring ropes. People were having issues slipping. But I was very happy for the two of them. And Triple H, I think, afterwards said that, it wasn't because of everything that happened that they won the titles. Like, it wasn't, influenced by what had happened in reality. But it's hard to not, take that into consideration and have it hit just that much more, knowing the true story behind what she has exactly and actually been working through. In less feel-good news on the card, Chad Gable re-signed with WWE, announced he had re-signed with WWE, and promptly walked in and lost his Intercontinental title match versus Sami Zayn once again. I don't think that there's a problem with this on the surface. So Chad Gable losing, the story is clearly building to a high-stakes match for him and Otis. That is the match that, this storyline is building to. Whether it has the belt on it in it or not, That's the match that everyone wants to see. That is what they're telling this story to get to. So I understand that side of things. I understand that the dynamic with Otis and with the dissolution of Alpha Academy is kind of what's more important. But on the other hand, this is the 5th IC title match that Chad Gable has lost in like 6 months. The dude is just losing these matches left and right. And I don't know how much longer they can tell this story with Sami Zayn and the IC title involved. But it also kind of feels like where they're at with this booking is he needs to win the title to finish that part of the story. So I don't know what they're doing, because my thought would have been that Otis versus Chad Gable was the SummerSlam match and that Chad Gable would have the IC title by then. But now it seems like maybe he's not winning the IC title till SummerSlam, or at all even. Like, I really don't know. I'm really glad he re-signed. I think he's going to be utilized very well. And I think hopefully this all is building to the start of a new faction with Gable, the Creed brothers, and Ivy Nile, and kind of leveling up like I had been thinking and expecting and kind of hoping for probably a month and a half now that they've been doing this heel Gable story. But I'm really interested in the booking and the pacing of this in particular, because it feels like he could have won multiple times and they just didn't do it. I don't think this is necessarily a case of Sami Zayn being like, yeah, I don't think that's working for me, brother. Like, I don't think he's backstage pulling weight and saying, I'm not dropping it to you, anything like that. But it's just interesting. It's interesting to continue to have him lose, but the story is kind of split, because part of it is the Alpha Academy stuff and part of it is losing is just spiraling him out more. So I'll be curious to see what Raw looks like this week and what he does on Raw, and if this pulls the trigger on a new faction or goes it alone for a bit, or what exactly it's going to be. But losing 5 IC title matches in the span of just months goes a long way to diminishing, like, hey, if he comes out and tries to do it again, like, everyone's gonna be like, dude, you've done this and lost 5 times now. Like, what are we doing? So I'm curious to see how they keep this story balancing all of the plates that they're spinning without getting tired, without it getting too repetitive. Elsewhere on the card, Cody Rhodes retained against AJ Styles in a brutal I Quit match that I kind of wish had a little bit of a different finish. But the two of them, absolutely the right choice to come out and start the show. That crowd in Scotland was white hot. The American crowds should be ashamed of themselves. They put a decimal counter, like a noise meter, on the screen because of how loud the Scotland fans were. Like, those fans were out of control every event. The like kickoff show on Friday, the SmackDown episode, then all night on Saturday at Clash of the Castle. It was unbelievable, and I think overseas fans and crowds have really come a long way, and they have gone out of their way to show how serious they are about wrestling and how passionate they are about wrestling. And I don't know if, like, American fans are just used to it or what it is, but there is something about these overseas crowds that is absolutely unhinged in, like, the best possible way. As well, Bayley retained the women's title against Piper Niven, who absolutely showed out in like a main event spot type match. Absolutely proved that she is a top level performer and deserves to be in those spots and in those matches. I thought they had a great match together. Bayley is kind of, if not the best, one of the best at that fighting from underneath babyface style. It's probably her and Sami Zayn, if I'm being honest, are probably the two best at it in wrestling right now. Just unbelievable, and when it comes to hitting those moments and selling those beats. And I really thought they did great with what they had, and I'm hoping they surprised a lot of people with that. And then the main event, the decision that will be talked about for months probably. I'm guessing this will be talked about until SummerSlam at least. Drew McIntyre versus Damian Priest for the WWE Heavyweight title, and Damian Priest retains with the help of CM Punk in a moment that was one of the best shot moments that I can remember. Like, if you haven't thought that WWE was right to fire Kevin Dunn up until this point. Or, I think he quit. Actually, I don't want to spread rumors out there. I don't know if he quit or was fired, but whatever. If you don't think it was the right move to go away from his style of camera work with 10,000 cuts, just watch this reveal. This moment of Drew hitting the Claymore, the ref running in without seeing who it is, the ref slides in and the camera's shooting from behind, counts 1, counts 2, stops, and then the camera pans to the other angle, and it is CM Punk in referee attire, there to cost Drew in front of his hometown crowd that absolutely sounded out for blood by the time the show was over. Damian Priest gets the win, a huge win in his title reign. And the match, I thought, was great. It looked like Damian Priest ripped every ligament in his leg with that spot where he got wrapped up in the ropes. And I don't know how they finished that match and did some of the things that they did. Hats off to him for being an absolute warrior. If that was, I'm assuming, unscripted and he just had to roll with it and kind of go through it, absolutely unbelievable. But the story here, obviously, it's two things. Damian Priest now is set for a date with Gunther at SummerSlam, which I think everyone's kind of expecting Gunther will win that, but that becomes the story of what's going to happen with Judgment Day. Are they going to be the ones that cost him? Is he going to try to go out on his own and lose? Is Liv Morgan going to factor into it? So that's definitely going to dominate a lot of Monday Night Raw programming, I'm guessing, between now and SummerSlam. And then the other side of it is now this ever-escalating blood feud with CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, where I think this is proof that the Triple H era and the Triple H regime and all that is truly its own thing. Because in years past, this, the Vince McMahon special would have been to slap the title on the Drew Punk match, because that was the biggest match that everyone wanted to see, so might as well have the title on it too. I think there is no doubt in my mind that if Vince McMahon and everybody were still running the show, that's what would happen. It would be Drew McIntyre wins here, and then the title match is Punk and Drew at SummerSlam. But I think it's smarter to go about it this way, because this match, this feud does not need the title, because it is not about the title. I'm guessing that their plan for CM Punk and how they're going to use him is to keep him away from the title for as long as they can, because he is a little bit older, he's on that part-time schedule, he's coming off of a major injury. It's not like he's been the beacon of health for the last couple of years since he's been back wrestling. It's hard to put one of your top titles on someone that is a little unreliable on that sense. Not in the sense of no showing or, not giving his all, anything like that. I think it's been pretty clear since he's come back. A lot of people have made it clear that he has been just an incredible, invaluable asset to the roster and to the company. I think that's pretty clear. I just mean putting the belts on him and expecting him to go out and carry it the way that Priest and Seth Rollins before him have done it is just, it's misguided. It's a bad use of CM Punk. So then the feud becomes, okay, we need Punk and Drew to have this blood feud where, either Drew dispatches him and goes on his way and goes back to try to get the title, or Punk beats him and we reset Drew with a where do I go from here? I can't even beat Punk type thing. I think that's probably where the emphasis is going to be. I don't think this is going to be a feud where Punk wins and immediately is like, I want that title. I mean, who knows? I could be wrong, because he is, one of the top stars in the company, and it does always make sense to put belts on the top stars. I just think, if I had to guess, if it was me calling the shots, I would not be thinking put the title on him. So I think going about it this way is a great way to build the stakes without hamstringing yourself into a corner that you have to then try to book yourself out of. So I'll be really curious to see what happens, because I don't think Punk is going to be at every Raw from now until SummerSlam. But Drew McIntyre is just going to get more and more unhinged. So those moments that they do have both of them on the shows together are probably going to be about as close to must-see TV as it can get. One other thing I thought was a really nice wrinkle in all of this was Wade Barrett, who absolutely lost his mind at CM Punk interfering in the match and costing Drew McIntyre. And he then proceeded to complain and rant and rave about it. And then in the post-show, wrap-up show after the event, he continued complaining, and Triple H gave a press conference where he said, he talked about how good it was to have CM Punk back and how happy he was to have this version of Punk. And then they cut back to the panel and Wade Barrett's like, what? No, I love Triple H. I respect Triple H, but no, this is wrong. Punk needs to be fired. He's out of line. And it was great work. Wade Barrett is absolutely a treasure on commentary. And he did a good job because immediately people on Twitter were like, oh man, did you see Wade Barrett go in on CM? Oh man, wow, Wade Barrett, that's really unprofessional. Like, oh man, I can't believe it. And like, I don't know what it is about CM Punk that everyone just assumes when those stories start to come out, like they're just always true. I don't know how that happens, but I could not believe that people were taking that seriously. I took it as obviously Wade Barrett just out here, working his ass off and doing a great job of selling this whole angle and this whole controversy and kind of giving credence to the people that were trying to say that this is like the new era version of like the Montreal Screwjob, which I don't think it compares. I think it's kind of a apples oranges kind of comparison here. I don't think it's quite the same, but it was very well handled. I think everyone kind of knew that CM Punk was going to factor into it somehow, but the way they did it and the way it was revealed, I think was the best possible result that it could have been. So even if Clash at the Castle didn't have all of the title changes or huge surprises, it still, I think, was a very good show that, like I said, solidifies the SummerSlam card a little bit more and really heats up some of those storylines that are going to really be what the crux of the show is going to be. And I think that's everything. I wanted to talk about this week. If I missed anything, if there was anything that TNA. Jeff Hardy is back in TNA, reunited with Matt Hardy. The Hardy Boys are together again. Really cool to see. I hope he stays healthy. I hope he stays well, and that they can have, the kind of run that they were wanting to have in AEW and just for whatever reason couldn't. I really hope that that's the case because the two of them are tag team and wrestling legends, and they deserve to have that nice send-off. So hopefully, fingers crossed that we get a good, strong run here for the two of them. And then also, Tatum Paxley surprised no one and was the mystery challenger for Jordynne Grace's TNA Knockouts title. Didn't win. I don't think anyone ever thought she was going to win. People were a little disappointed too. I think a lot of people were hoping for Natalya to be in that spot, because there have been kind of a lot of hints and teases at a Jordynne Grace Natalya match in recent weeks, but I would assume they're saving that for a bigger marquee show. I can't imagine you do a TNA crossover and not have the two of them wrestle. So we'll see. We'll see how long they hold off on doing something like that. But very happy to see Jeff Hardy back and back together with Matt Hardy. Very cool to see TNA continue to work with WWE like this. Supposedly TNA will have a big presence in the 25-man Battle Royal to determine the Trick Williams #1 contender. Obviously, everyone in the world wants it to be Joe Hendry, so hopefully it is Joe Hendry. I will leave it at that. I think that is everything. We close every episode running through the top matches of the week. In case you missed them, what you need to go back and check out before we get started with the next week. So if you have not seen any of these, please do yourself a favor and check them out. Appreciate everyone watching. I hope all of the dads out there had a wonderful Father's Day, and enjoy the week. For matches to watch, we have Jordynne Grace versus Roxanne Perez for the NXT Women's title at Battleground. We have Lyra Valkyria versus Io Sky from Monday Night Raw. We have Ilya Dragunov versus Braun Breaker from Monday Night Raw. We have Drew McIntyre versus Finn Balor from Monday Night Raw. We have Shawn Spears versus Javon Evans from NXT. We have Will Ospreay versus Rey Fenix for the AEW International Championship from AEW Dynamite. And we have Drew McIntyre versus Damian Priest for the WWE Heavyweight title at Clash at the Castle. If you missed any of those, please check them out. Thank you very much for watching. Everybody have a good week.